Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Women's Wisdom Through the Ages. I am here with the wonderful, inspirational Meena Kumar, and so today we're actually going to be doing two parts of Women's Wisdom Through the Ages. The first part will be hearing more about Meena's own story, and then that will lead on to how she started her business, which is really important and inspirational. And for those of you who haven't seen this before, my name's Catherine J, or Catherine Joy, and the thinking behind Women's Wisdom Through the Ages is basically that women think differently through the ages. As we age, we think differently. Yeah. Have you found that?
I think so. You're very right. In my experience, that has been so.
Yeah.
And yes, hi everyone. My name is Meena Kumar, and it's lovely meeting Catherine. And lovely being here in this beautiful park.
It's a beautiful park. I want to do a swing around after and just show you some of the park. It's just magnificent. And so basically people think differently at different ages, but also for those of you who have been watching or listening to our podcast for a while, you'll know that I speak to people of all different ages. So we've had women on from Anjali in her 20s, and then going up to people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. So it's just women, when we come together of different generations, I think we think differently, even according to when we were born in time. And so it's some people might speak badly about different generations, like a Gen X or a Gen Y or a millennial or Gen Z. But we each come, I think, with different ways of thinking, but different sometimes it can be negative, sometimes really positive.
Right.
So yes. I'm quite often, especially because sometimes I teach and I'm challenged. I know if the young ones push me a lot, I'm like, I think there's something here that I'm supposed to be getting that they're trying to give me.
Right.
To just challenge my thinking that maybe there might be a different way of looking at it.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of putting it.
Yeah.
Yes, and I agree, you're very right, and also in my experience, I've seen my grandmother, my mom, and me, and now my kids who are, teenagers or young adults. And I've seen that the same thing happens with every generation. The issues may be slightly different here and there, but essentially it's the same.
Yes, yeah. Okay, Now I'm going to start off just by introducing Meena. So she's in her 50s, so we're both in our 50s.
Right.
And she is a licensed conveyancer by profession with a certificate of conveyancing law from Macquarie University here in Sydney. And she also has an MBA in human resource management and has practiced in the area for about 18 years. But her passion, though, is about natural handcrafted skincare products, a venture in partnership with her friend Seema Barua.
Yeah.
And so her mission in life is to learn from whatever life throws at her and try to give as much back to the community as she can. And today especially, Meena's got a really interesting story, and it's also quite timely. Like, even though we're recording today, which is the first day of November, and so when you're watching this, it could be December, it could even already be 2021. But it's the topic of part of your story, I think, is timeless. Yeah. So it'd be really good to be, chatting and, sharing a little bit about that. So again, welcome.
Thank you.
But first of all, like, we're in Australia.
Yes.
I'm an Australian. I was born here. My parents were born here. But we're all migrants. I don't think there's even any full-blood Aborigines in the whole country. Right. So we all have we're all from somewhere.
Yeah.
So how long have you been in Australia?
We've been here now 21 years, this September.
Yeah.
And we came in 1999. We came on a skilled migrant visa.
Yeah.
My husband, my son, my son and I. My son was only 5 years old.
Yeah.
And we've been here since then.
Great. And what brought you here?
I think a better quality of life. We are professionals. We both had really good jobs back in India. And my son had just started kindy.
Yeah.
And then what happened was that my son was in the mobile telephone, industry. And
Your son or
then
your husband?
My husband, sorry.
Oh,
did
yes.
I say my son? Sorry. Yes, and he was being sent to a number of different places, and for some time,
Yeah.
as long as 1 year. 1 year. So first he went to Sri Lanka, and then it was to Maldives, and then he wasn't really keen on applying for migration to Australia. But then the fact that we were having to stay apart, and my son was starting to have issues about why is dad not home,
Yeah.
and all of that, and our migration came just then.
Yeah.
And that also happened because of a very close friend of ours who was also applying for migration. And they said, let's just do it together and see what happens.
Yeah.
And then when I say quality of life, we were in Delhi. There was a lot of pollution there.
Yeah.
Still is, and it's worse now. My son used to fall sick very often because of that. And also I wanted for him, both of us wanted somewhere where he didn't have to study because he had to have a particular career. And it was a lot of rote learning and stuff like that. I wanted to for him to have let loose his creativity,
Yes.
as it were.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought that Australia would provide that opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think
Beautiful.
we made the right decision.
Yeah, wonderful. And for those of you, some of you may even be watching from overseas. I know sometimes I have friends from Indonesia or different countries, jumping on.
Yep.
And I find I've taught even been to university in different countries,
Right.
and it's quite different. And one of the reasons that people come to Australia, just from my perspective of teaching and having taught many people from all over the world over many years at different
Right.
ages, adults as well as children and teens, is that we have the group work as well as we
Yes.
have the individual work. We have the spoken as well as the verbal.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you're from Latin America, I'm sure you are fluent in English and you love chatting.
Yes.
Whereas if you're from northern China somewhere or, Northeast Asia, it seems to be, from my experience, that your written work would probably be higher level,
yeah.
just because the concentration of the culture and different things. So I
Isn't
think
that-
in Australia especially, I think it's lovely. We have a really good mix of the individual work, the group work, the
Yes.
spoken and the verbal. And also, now with the creativity, I would say one of the things we used to have years ago was also the diversity in thought and the debating
Yes.
and the alternative points of view. And
That's right.
I would say that that's not happening at the moment. If you're not following the politically correct line, and I hear this from students, I hear this from parents and grandparents, where sometimes the young ones are telling me, or telling, their parents or grandparents, oh, if I say what I really thought at uni, I'd fail. Or every now and then they actually do say what they feel, but then they do fail. So
Right.
that's interesting. So I think that's going to change again.
Hopefully, yes.
Yeah. So how have you found that? Like with your son compared to how you were going to uni, has your expectations with your son, have you felt that his creativity has come alive?
I think so. With my experience in India, school, I did go to a convent, Sacred Heart Convent.
Yeah.
And that was, a very traditional kind of learning. And as you said, it was, textbooks, and you learn and regurgitate everything
Yeah.
and all of that. So that's why I preferred science, which is something you need to understand
Yeah.
and not just, maga. But with my uni, with HR, that was a completely different system of learning, which was very good. We did have group discussions, and we had even sessions like group dynamic, small groups like 14 people. Again, it was an American based institute.
Okay.
It was called Xavier Labor Relations Institute.
Yeah.
Yes, but here and even then it was still, I'm studying for this profession and all of that. But when I came here and I enrolled in Macquarie University for my conveyancing law, I found I loved that learning. It was such a different kind of learning through assignments, through actual practical applications.
Yes.
I loved that.
Yeah, yeah.
And I found that most of the learning, my son went to James Roos. So, yes, it was a full-on, learning for him. But then it also, he had sporting outlets. He loves soccer. He played a lot of, in soccer, cricket, more of soccer, less of cricket, and tennis. And kind of that built his personality. In India, sports is something, you do only if you have time from your studies.
Yeah.
But here it is different.
Yes.
Sports is very much a very important part, way of life back. And at one point he really did want to become a soccer player.
Yeah.
But then, yes,
Okay.
he couldn't. And but as far as creativity goes, he just happened to be very good at math. He's good at English, but he's not a musically inclined person.
Okay.
He loves it, and he did take drama and all of that. But it's just happened that he wanted to do medicine.
Yeah.
And there, but with my daughter is very different. She, but you're right. Creative outlets, I think, in most schools are not that.
Yeah, because I've been in and out of
encouraged.
teaching for many years. Like I started doing teaching back in the late 80s, and that was when it was like, it was really different if you had a different opinion or if you asked your students what they thought.
Yep.
It was more the traditional type of teachers. And, I'm the expert, I'm at the front, and how dare you have an opinion, especially as a young prac student coming in, studying teaching.
Right.
And I've been in and out, and like I said, I've lived in different countries. And so just to see over the years, it's like you have a space in time where maybe a few years where it's all about creativity, but then it sort of comes back. And obviously it depends on your school, and there's so many different factors, and also on the different teachers. And I went back teaching full-time last year and the year before, and the pressures on teachers are huge. So even though you might really, really want to dig in and do something really creative, that because there's so much paperwork, there's so much administration, and the pastoral care, it really depends on which school that you're at. So there's different types of schools that do pastoral care better. So when I'm mentioning things, it's not bagging teachers at all. I am still a teacher, but it's different, and so I think there's a better way to do things.
Yes, I think so too. I don't know how, but yes. And you're absolutely right. Teachers are under pressure, and it also depends upon the school.
Yes.
And yes, individual teachers can help. I think my daughter's experience in the school that she goes to has been pretty good.
Yeah.
She's got an awesome year advisor.
Yeah.
And it's not just school work, it's also personal issues that they have been dealing with many of the students really, really well.
Yes.
And she never played sport till she actually went to high school.
Okay. Wow.
And it's funny, it's a selective school.
Yeah.
But she's gone into netball. She's taken drama as one of her subjects in year 11.
Beautiful.
She's going to be doing that next year. And PAS, which is very sport oriented. So I think that's brought that out in her, and she's tending more towards the social sciences, which is wherever she wants to do, and which is good for her.
Beautiful.
Yes.
And I'm just aware time's going on.
Right.
You had something happen in your life which totally changed. You were going along one direction, and then something happened, and then it's taken you off in a different direction. So what happened?
about 10 years ago. This was 2010.
Yep. So just before you go into what happened, like what did it look like? What was your before? Where were you working? What was happening?
Right. So I had a change in career just before. I used to be in HR.
Yes.
I was an HR and quality manager with a company, and then my daughter was born. And I'd always been interested in the law side of things, in HR also. So when my daughter was about 6 months old, I enrolled in Macquarie Uni, and I studied conveyancing law. After which I joined this very good firm called Dominic Stamford's in the city, and I loved my job. And then all of a sudden, it was a city job. I used to take the train and go and come, and then all of a sudden I was diagnosed with breast cancer. This was in February of 2010. We'd just come back from a trip to India, visiting my extended family there, and what I had was some niggling pain, more like a pinprick in my left breast. And I thought, okay, I used to have a little bit of a back pain, my shoulder, actually, back shoulder. And I thought maybe it's connected to that, some nerves getting pinched. And then when I did a self-examination, I found not a lump, but something like a thickening. And my husband and I talked about it and said, you might as well go and have it looked at. So I went to my GP, and my GP also said, oh, there doesn't seem to be any lump, but this could be a cyst, and have it looked at. I went to had my mammogram done, and they were taking a long time, but I really didn't think about it much.
Yeah.
And then they said, I think you should have an ultrasound as well. So we can't see very clearly on the mammogram. I said, okay. So we had the ultrasound done, and the person who did the ultrasound said, okay, when are you going to see your GP? Have you an appointment? I said, no, but I will get one. So when is the report getting ready? She said, it takes a couple of days, but you can get an appointment today or tomorrow even. We can send the unofficial report by email. And I said, okay. And something on the back of my mind was saying, why is she asking me to get an appointment so early? So anyway, I wandered into Carlingford Court from there, just nearby, and I hung around and I called my doctor, and I got an appointment after an hour or so. So I just went there. Well, my doctor had everything ready then, and well, my world came crashing down because I really wasn't ready for it. But I have to say, she was an awesome doctor. She had already fixed my appointment onwards in the next 2 days for a core biopsy, which was the next step. And she said, Meena, it's confirmed. I mean, it's there for you to see. The calcium patterns and everything is very clear, and it's not just in one spot where the thickening was, but it's gone into your milk ducts. And since I was a very small breasted person, there was no other way other than mastectomy. So my husband came to pick me up from there, and I was like, it's breast cancer. And he wasn't ready for it at all. So just to tell you that, Catherine, about 9-10 months before that, my cousin's daughter, she was maybe 30 years old, or even less, about 29, 30. She'd been diagnosed with breast cancer.
Wow.
And well, she came to see me when I asked her, what do I do now? Who do I see? I needed her doctor's details and contacts and also. What she said then was something which has stayed with me, is that, if you have to have breast cancer, if you have to have cancer, breast cancer is probably the best cancer to have. And
That's an interesting thought.
yes, at the time I found that very weird.
Yeah.
How does that even, make sense? But you know what? I will come to that later. But and she, because she'd already gone through the process of surgery and seeing an oncologist, I went to the same doctors. I took 2 opinions for my surgery, and the doctor who gave me the first appointment in 2 weeks, I just went with that.
Yeah.
And the oncologist, I have a cousin who's an oncologist in the US. She'd already conferred with him for my niece's treatment, and it went like I was like a zombie going through the moments. I didn't give myself time to think. I just said, okay, surgery. After 6 weeks of that surgery, I had went through chemotherapy and all of that. So, is there anything you want to ask me?
No. Well, did you tell your children straight away?
Yes.
Yeah.
So what I did, my son was about 15, 16 years old. He was in high school, so I took him for a walk, and I told him what it was. He was shocked, but I think given his age, he took it quite well. And my husband actually took him for a drive and explained to him what it was, and that yes, we've got to face it. Mom's going to go through all this treatment, first surgery and then this, so he'll have to.
And did you think it was like a death sentence, or because your niece had already gone through and come out, it sounds like, did you
Yeah, no,
how did you?
she hadn't really come out of it. She had actually more surgeries to go through.
Oh wow, okay.
The reason was that my niece had this gene called BRCA1 gene, which is the gene. There are 2 genes, BRCA1 and BRCA2. So in my family, Catherine, nobody in generations, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and I had many aunts and uncles and cousins, nobody had ever had breast cancer. But in her, she was the second cousin, his daughter, my niece. Her dad's sister had it. So when she had that BRCA1 gene test done, because of her past history and some other aunts from her mom's side, I think.
I'm just going to check if can you see the REC still recording? We don't have a videographer. So
Okay.
I'm just going to I am listening absolutely, but I'm just going to come up to check.
Okay.
Yes. We're going to go to part 2, so you won't be missing out with the story, because it's fascinating of how this story started a whole new life.
Right.
Which will be coming into part 2.
Yes.
Yep. Sorry, keep going.
Okay, so where was I now? My
Your
yeah,
niece and
yes.
going through the different surgeries.
That's
and,
right.
And the
So
BRCA1, BRCA2.
Yeah. So
Yep.
she'd had the test done, and when I was diagnosed, my oncologist also recommended the same test for me, but I didn't have the gene.
Okay.
So that was unrelated. But then because she had the gene, there was more chance of her going, her second breast also getting it,
Okay.
and her ovaries as well.
Oh wow. Okay.
So she had to go through this very complicated surgery for a double mastectomy, and the ovaries being removed. And she'd had her chemotherapy first, because she didn't have it all over the breast like
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
So it was just, and then she had a lumpectomy. But following all this diagnosis, she had to have it, because that was later in the year,
Yeah.
after I was diagnosed. So she was still going through.
Wow.
But the way she dealt with it was an inspiration to me. And also the fact that she'd gone through these doctors, that was a huge help. So then I didn't have these gaps in time
Yeah.
before I went for the next level
Yeah.
of treatment. And Yes, so I went through my chemotherapy. That took about 6 to 8 months. And during that time, I had help from my sisters. So one sister came from India for 3
Wow,
months,
that's
leaving her
beautiful.
husband and staying with me for 3 months. And before she left, my sister from the US came and stayed with me for 3 months.
I love that.
And although I was going through this, I used to just be a curled up ball for the first 3 months. That chemotherapy is very, very strong. So I really couldn't eat anything, but I remember that's the first time I watched Master Chef with my sister. And, we used to talk about our childhood and went through all these, TV serials and movies and all of that. That sort of kept me going.
Yeah, beautiful.
But as far as eating and all of that, that was not a thing even.
Yeah.
I just couldn't. And what bothered me most was that my daughter was just starting kindy, and it was extremely hard to explain to her what it meant.
Yeah. And especially because seeing your mum sick.
Yes, and teachers had to be told, and I don't know what they said to her at school. She was like, is mum going to die? And you asked me that question, was I thinking of it as a death sentence? No, I actually didn't. I didn't want to go to that place. I just wanted to deal with it. Let me go through the surgery, the chemotherapy, and yes, my niece's treatment that she had gone through gave me strength.
Yeah, wonderful.
Of course, I had my meltdown moments. There were times where I went, why me? Nobody in my family for generations has had this.
I'm going to swing down so we can see we have a little visitor down here. We're in a beautiful park, and I'm going to swing around so you can see where we are. But also, I think now would probably be a good time to just a beautiful story, but it's got a lovely fresh beginnings, which is one of the reasons that I asked Meena to come on. I'm going to zoom in, and then we're going to go to part 2, and we may have to actually move because it looks like it might rain as well.
Right.
So hold on to that
like
thought. This is Meena Kumar. I'm Catherine J or Catherine Joy. You are watching part 1, and it's about overcoming breast cancer today, and it's women's wisdom through the ages. And this is all part of under the social enterprise called Imagineering to a Better World. Okay, I'm just going to swing around so you can see our little visitor. Is he still here or has he moved off?
I think he's gone. His camera
He might
shy
have
looks
gone away.
like.
I'm just going to go around so you can see where we are.
Where was he?
Just amazing. So you can see some crows. Sounds like a bush turkey, a huge big bush turkey. So it's just stunning where we are, but it looks like it's going to rain. So Meena, did you just want to give a bit of a wave and then we'll stop? And the rain's here.